Welcome to Mystic Tales. Tonight, we journey deep into the heart of Japanese folklore to explore one of its most captivating and enigmatic creatures. The Kitsune, the fox spirit that has walked through centuries of stories, legends, and sacred traditions. As you settle into comfort, let the tale of these mystical beings carry you into peaceful rest. Let's begin. In the twilight hours between day and night, when shadows lengthen across rice fields and mist rises from mountain streams, there exists a threshold between our world and another. It is in these liminal spaces that the Kitsune makes its home. Neither fully animal nor holy spirit, but something that exists in the spaces between. The word Kitsune simply means fox in Japanese, but when spoken in the context of folklore and legend, it transforms into something far more profound. These are not the red foxes you might glimpse darting through a forest or across a field. These are beings of supernatural power, intelligence that rivals or surpasses that of humans, and magical abilities that can reshape reality itself. For thousands of years, the Kitsune has occupied a unique place in the Japanese imagination. It appears in the oldest written records, in sacred Shinto shrines, in Buddhist temples, in the pages of classical literature, and in the performances of traditional theater. The fox spirit has been feared and revered, worshipped and warded against, loved and dreaded. This duality lies at the very heart of what makes the Kitsune so endlessly fascinating. Some Kitsune are benevolent protectors, messengers of the gods who bring prosperity, guard the innocent, and offer wisdom to those who show them respect. They appear as beautiful women with eyes full of ancient knowledge, or as magnificent foxes with fur like moonlight, guiding travelers to safety and blessing harvests with abundance. These are the Zenko, the good foxes, whose presence brings fortune rather than misfortune. But there are others. The Nagasune, sometimes called Yako or wild foxes, who delight in mischief and malice. They possess humans, drive people to madness, create illusions that lead travelers astray in the wilderness, and exact terrible revenge upon those who wrong them or their kind. They can appear as phantom lights dancing over marshland, luring the unwary to their doom. They can become beautiful seductresses who drain the life force from unsuspecting men. This dual nature reflects something essential about the Japanese understanding of the supernatural world. The spirit realm is not divided neatly into good and evil, light and darkness. Instead, it exists in shades of gray, in intentions that can shift, in beings whose nature depends on circumstance, respect, and the delicate balance between the human and the divine. The Kitsune embodies this perfectly. A fox spirit might help you one day and trick you the next. It might fall genuinely in love with a human and create a family, only to be forced back to its true nature by circumstance. It might serve the gods faithfully as a messenger, or it might use its powers for selfish ends. The Kitsune is unpredictable, powerful, and eternally fascinating. As we journey through the complete story of the Kitsune tonight, we will explore the origins of these spirits, their powers and abilities, the famous legends that have been told about them for centuries, their connection to the divine, and the ways they continue to capture imaginations even in the modern world. We will meet the most famous Kitsune of all, the devastating nine-tailed fox Tamamo-no-Mae. We will discover the phenomenon of Kitsunetsuki, fox possession. We will learn about fox brides and their human husbands, about weddings held during sun showers, about sacred shrines guarded by stone fox statues. But more than anything, we will come to understand why the Kitsune has endured as a symbol and a story for so many centuries. What is it about these fox spirits that speaks to something deep within the human experience. What truths about nature, about power, about transformation and identity do they represent? Tonight, let these questions and their answers unfold naturally as we walk the paths worn smooth by countless tellings. The Kitsune awaits, patient and eternal, ready to reveal its secrets to those willing to listen. To understand the Kitsune, we must journey back through time, back through the layers of history and legend, to discover where these fox spirits first emerged in the Japanese consciousness. The fox has lived alongside humans in Japan for millennia. Real foxes, ordinary animals of flesh and blood, have inhabited the islands for as long as people have. They lived near human settlements, visible at the edges of rice fields where they hunted the rats and mice that threatened crops. This practical relationship, where foxes protected the grain that sustained communities, formed the foundation for something far more mystical. The earliest written references to foxes in Japanese literature appear in text from the 8th century. The Nihon Shoki, one of the oldest chronicles of Japan's history, completed in the year 720, mentions foxes in ways that suggest they were already considered supernatural beings. One passage describes how a white fox appeared as a good omen, an auspicious sign from the heavens. Another relates how foxes were connected to sacred shrines and divine messages. But the origins of the Kitsune as a supernatural being likely stretch back even further, into the oral traditions that existed before anyone wrote them down. Scholars believe that fox folklore may have originated with some of Japan's earliest inhabitants, peoples who settled in the Mino and Owari provinces in central Japan. These communities maintained a shared culture in which shape-shifting foxes played a significant role in their spiritual worldview. When the Yamato clan consolidated power across much of Japan during the 6th century, establishing what would become the imperial dynasty, they encountered and absorbed the beliefs of the peoples they unified. The fox stories of the Mino and Owari people, along with the practice of ancestor worship and reverence for natural spirits, evolved into what we now recognize as Shinto, Japan's native religion. At the same time, influences from continental Asia were transforming Japanese culture. Buddhism arrived from China via Korea in the 6th century, bringing with it not just religious teachings, but also art, literature, and folklore. Among these imported stories were tales of Huli Jing, the fox spirits of Chinese mythology. The Chinese fox spirits shared many characteristics with what would become the Japanese Kitsune. They were shapeshifters, often taking the form of beautiful women. They possessed magical powers that grew with age. They could be beneficent or malevolent, and most importantly, they served as a bridge between the human world and the realm of the divine. But as these Chinese fox stories encountered existing Japanese beliefs, they transformed. They took on distinctly Japanese characteristics, blending with indigenous fox folklore to create something unique. While Chinese fox spirits were often portrayed as fundamentally dangerous beings whose beauty masked predatory intent, Japanese Kitsune developed a more nuanced identity. Yes, they could be dangerous, but they could also be loyal, loving, and divine. One of the oldest recorded Kitsune tales appears in a collection called the Nihon Raoeki, written by the monk yokai between 787 and 824. This story, often referred to in English as "On Taking a Fox as a Wife and Bringing Forth a Child," or simply Kitsune, Come and Sleep, tells of a young man who marries a beautiful woman only to discover she is actually a fox in human form. The tale is brief but potent. A man from Mino province searches for a bride. He meets a woman of remarkable beauty and grace, and they marry. She bears him a child, and they live together happily. But the family dog grows suspicious of the wife and threatens her. One day, startled by the dog's aggression, the woman transforms back into her true form, a fox, and flees. Yet she continues to visit her husband, coming to sleep beside him at night before vanishing at dawn. This story, preserved for over 1,200 years, reveals something essential about how the Japanese viewed kitsune. The fox wife is not portrayed as a monster or a villain. She is a loving spouse and mother. When her true nature is revealed, it brings sadness rather than horror. The man does not reject her, and she does not abandon her family entirely. It is a tale of love transcending the boundary between species, between the human and the supernatural. The etymology of the word kitsune itself may derive from this story. One theory suggests it comes from the phrase kitsu, ni, meaning come and sleep, referring to how the fox wife would return to her husband's side at night. While this folk etymology may not be historically accurate, the fact that it exists shows how deeply this particular tale embedded itself in the culture. As Japanese civilization developed through the Heian period 794 to 1185, the era when classical Japanese culture flowered in the imperial capital of Kyoto, kitsune stories proliferated. They appeared in poetry, in collections of setsuwa or explanatory tales, in religious texts, and in the gossip of the court. The concept of Kitsunetsuki, fox possession, was already well established. People attributed strange illnesses and unusual behavior to the influence of fox spirits. During this time, the connection between foxes and the deity Inari also solidified. Inari, originally a god of rice and agriculture, became one of the most widely worshipped figures in Japan. Foxes were identified as Inari's messengers, servants, and sometimes as manifestations of the deity itself. This association elevated the fox from trickster spirit to something approaching the divine. By the medieval period, kitsune had become firmly embedded in every level of Japanese culture. They appeared in religious contexts at Inari shrines, in literature and poetry, in folk beliefs about possession and illness, in cautionary tales told to children, and in stories of romance between foxes and humans. The fox spirit had transformed from a simple folkloric figure into a complex symbol that could represent wildness and civilization, danger and protection, deception and truth. Through the Edo period, 1603 to 1867, when Japan was unified under the Tokugawa shogunate and experienced a long era of peace and cultural flourishing, kitsune stories reached perhaps their greatest elaboration. Authors wrote extensively about different types of foxes and their classifications. Artists depicted them in ukiyo-e prints. Dramatists created plays featuring kitsune as central characters, performed in no kyogen kabuki and bunraku theaters. The fox spirit had become inseparable from Japanese identity itself, a creature that captured something essential about the Japanese worldview, about the relationship between humans and nature, about the thin veil between the mundane and the magical. The kitsune was no longer just a story. It had become part of the very fabric of what it meant to be Japanese. What exactly is a kitsune? What defines these beings? To understand the fox spirit, we must explore not just their abilities, but their essential nature, the characteristics that make them what they are. In their natural form, kitsune appear as foxes, but they are immediately distinguishable from ordinary animals. A kitsune's fur might shine with an unnatural luster, gleaming like polished metal or glowing with its own inner light. White foxes are considered especially powerful, and are often associated with Inari and the divine realm. Their eyes hold an intelligence that transcends mere animal cunning, ancient and knowing, able to see through deception and into the human heart. But the most distinctive feature of a kitsune is its tails. Young fox spirits have only a single tail, just like an ordinary fox. But as a kitsune ages and gains power and wisdom, it grows additional tails. The most common numbers mentioned in folklore are 1, 5, 7, and 9 tails, though stories exist of kitsune with other numbers as well. The progression of tails is not arbitrary. According to tradition, a fox must live for 100 years before it gains the supernatural abilities that transform it from an ordinary animal into a kitsune. Once this threshold is crossed, the fox gains magical powers and its first additional tail. For each subsequent century of life, the kitsune grows another tail, a visible manifestation of accumulated power and knowledge. The ultimate achievement for a kitsune is to reach 9 tails, becoming a kyubi no kitsune. These 9-tailed foxes are ancient beings, nearly 1,000 years old or more, possessing powers that approach those of gods. They can see and hear everything that happens in the world. They can control fire and create illusions so perfect that reality itself seems to bend to their will. Some 9-tailed foxes have golden or white fur, marking their divine or celestial nature. These are beings of supreme power, to be feared or revered accordingly. The tails themselves sometimes serve as a source of power. In some stories, a kitsune can be defeated if its tails are cut off, stripping it of its abilities. In others, the tails can act independently, moving with their own volition. The number of tails visible can also be controlled by a skilled kitsune, who might hide all but one to appear less powerful than it truly is. Kitsune are broadly divided into 2 main categories, representing the duality at their heart. Zenko, which means good foxes, are benevolent spirits associated with the deity Inari. These are the white or golden foxes that guard shrines, the messengers that carry prayers between humans and gods, the protectors who ward off evil and bring blessings. Zenko act as intermediaries between the celestial and earthly realms, embodying purity, wisdom, and divine favor. In contrast, Nagitsune or Yako are wild foxes unconnected to Inari or any divine purpose. These are the tricksters, the mischief makers, the vengeful spirits who delight in causing chaos in human lives. They are not necessarily evil in the absolute sense, but they follow their own desires without regard for human welfare. A no-kitsune might possess a person simply because it finds amusement in making them behave strangely. It might lead travelers astray for the joy of watching them stumble lost through the wilderness. Or it might exact terrible vengeance if someone harms it or its family. Yet even this division between Zenko and no-kitsune is not absolute. A wild fox might perform a benevolent act if it suits its purposes or if a human has shown it kindness. A celestial fox messenger might become offended and use its powers to teach a disrespectful person a harsh lesson. The nature of the kitsune is fluid, shaped by circumstance, by treatment, and by the individual spirit's personality and choices. Some scholars and folklorists have attempted to create more elaborate classification systems for kitsune, categorizing them by element or by function. In some systems, there are 13 types of kitsune, each associated with a specific element: heaven, wind, spirit, fire, earth, river, ocean, mountain, forest, thunder, sound, time, and void. Each type possesses unique abilities related to its element. A river kitsune might control water and create mist. A fire kitsune could generate flames and withstand extreme heat. A void kitsune might move through shadows and become intangible. Other classification systems focus on the fox's role or origin. The Tenko or celestial fox is an ancient being that has transcended its earthly form and resides in the heavens, appearing sometimes as humanoid figures rather than foxes. The Kiko or spirit fox is invisible except to those it possesses or chooses to reveal itself to. The Kuda, Kitsune or pipe fox is so named because it is small enough to fit inside a bamboo tube kept by certain families as a familiar spirit to use in bringing fortune or cursing enemies. Regardless of type or classification, all Kitsune share certain fundamental characteristics. They are extraordinarily intelligent, with minds that rival or exceed human intellect. They possess long memories and never forget a kindness or a slight. They are driven by strong emotions, capable of deep love, fierce loyalty, burning anger, and patient vengeance. They value freedom and resent being constrained or controlled. And they exist in a space between worlds, neither fully animal, nor fully human, nor fully divine, but partaking of all three natures. A kitsune in its natural form might live in the wilderness, in mountain forests or remote valleys where humans rarely venture. But they are also drawn to human civilization, curious about people and the societies they create. They might establish their dens near villages or even within towns, drawn by the energy of human life. Sacred spaces, particularly Inari shrines, also attract kitsune, who may serve as guardians of these holy places. The lifespan of a kitsune is extraordinary. To achieve 9 tails, a fox must live for 800 or 900 years, and some legends speak of even older spirits. Throughout these centuries, the kitsune accumulates not just power but knowledge, experience, and understanding. An ancient kitsune has witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the building and destruction of cities, the births and deaths of countless generations. This perspective makes them profound, often cryptic teachers, capable of insights that span centuries. Yet, despite their power and longevity, kitsune are not invulnerable. They fear dogs, which can see through their illusions and transformations, sensing the true fox beneath any disguise. Fire can harm them despite their ability to create it. Iron and certain sacred objects can ward them off or break their spells. And if their true nature is revealed at the wrong moment, particularly if they are in human form when caught by surprise, a kitsune may be forced to revert to fox shape and flee, sometimes unable to return to the life they had built. The kitsune, then, is a being of contradictions and complexity, powerful yet vulnerable, ancient yet playful, divine messenger yet earthly trickster. It is this richness, this refusal to be simply one thing, that has allowed the kitsune to endure as a figure of fascination for over 1,000 years. No exploration of kitsune would be complete without understanding their profound connection to Inari Okami, one of the most important and widely worshipped deities in all of Japanese spiritual practice. This relationship elevates the fox from folklore creature to sacred symbol, from trickster to divine servant. Inari Okami, often simply called Inari, is the deity of rice, agriculture, fertility, tea, sake, general prosperity, and worldly success. In a culture where rice is not merely food, but the foundation of life itself, the staff of existence, and the measure of wealth, Inari occupies a position of supreme importance. The very word Inari is thought to derive from Inari, meaning rice growing or the ripening of rice, though the true etymology may be even more ancient. The worship of Inari dates back at least to the early 8th century, when the first shrine was established on Inari Mountain in the Fushimi district of what is now Kyoto. Some scholars believe the veneration may stretch back even further to the late 5th century or before. emerging from the agricultural rituals of rice farming communities. As rice cultivation formed the bedrock of Japanese civilization, the deity who protected and blessed this vital crop naturally became central to religious life. Foxes became associated with Inari for reasons both practical and mystical. In the rice fields, real foxes hunted the rodents that threatened the grain stores and growing crops. Farmers observed these animals protecting their harvests and began to see them as agents of the rice deity. What began as practical observation transformed into spiritual symbolism. The fox became Inari's messenger, the visible manifestation of the god's protective power. But the connection runs deeper than mere symbolism. In Shinto belief, the line between messenger and deity can blur. The fox statues that guard Inari shrines, sometimes hundreds of them at major sites, are not representations of Inari itself, yet they are treated with the reverence due to sacred beings. They are called Byakusan, white foxes, though not because they are literally white in color, but because they are spiritual rather than physical entities. Like Inari, these messenger foxes cannot normally be seen by human eyes. They exist in the realm between the visible and invisible, between earth and heaven. The Fushimi Inari Taisha in Kyoto stands as the head shrine of all Inari worship in Japan. Founded in 711 on the slopes of Mount Inari, this shrine complex has grown over the centuries into a sprawling network of paths, gates, and smaller shrines covering the entire mountain. The most famous feature is the Senbon Torii, thousands upon thousands of vermilion torii gates donated by worshippers and businesses over the years, creating tunnels of red that wind up the mountain paths. Walking through these torii gates is to walk through a liminal space, a threshold between the mundane world and the sacred realm. The gates themselves mark the transition, and the journey up the mountain becomes a pilgrimage, each step taking you deeper into the domain of Inari and the fox spirits. At various points along the paths, you encounter fox statues seated in pairs, guardians watching over the sacred space. These fox statues hold objects in their mouths or beneath their paws, each item bearing symbolic significance. Some hold a key, representing the key to the rice granary, symbolizing abundance and the opening of prosperity. Others carry a jewel or sacred sphere, the Hoshi no Tama or star ball that appears repeatedly in Kitsune folklore, representing the fox's soul or magical power. Some hold a scroll signifying wisdom and knowledge. Others cradle a fox cub, showing fertility and the continuation of blessings through generations. And some carry a sheaf of rice itself, the gift of Inari made tangible. Worshippers visiting Inari shrines make offerings appropriate to both the deity and the fox messengers. Rice is the most traditional offering, acknowledging Inari's role as the rice deity. Sake, which is made from rice, also serves as a proper offering. But the offerings most associated with foxes themselves are fried tofu, known as aborage, and preparations made from it. Foxes are believed to love fried tofu. This belief has become so ingrained in Japanese culture that certain dishes are named for the Kitsune connection. Kitsune udon is a noodle soup topped with aborage. Inari sushi is sushi rice wrapped in a pocket of fried tofu, sometimes shaped with pointed corners to resemble fox ears. These foods serve both as offerings at shrines and as everyday dishes that carry a connection to the fox spirit tradition. There are over 30,000 Inari shrines throughout Japan, making Inari worship more widespread than that of any other deity. These range from the massive Fushimi Inari complex to small roadside shrines tucked into neighborhoods, from corporate shrines on company rooftops to household shrines in private homes. Wherever there is an Inari shrine, there are foxes, whether represented in stone, in paintings, or in the beliefs of the worshippers. The relationship between Inari and the fox messengers reflects core principles of Shinto belief. The kami, the deities or spirits of Shinto, are not distant, transcendent beings removed from the world. They are immanent, present in nature, in specific places, in the rhythms of agriculture and the turning of seasons. They are accessible, responding to prayers and offerings, blessing those who show proper respect and maintain right relationships. The fox messengers embody this accessibility. They move between the divine realm and the human world, carrying prayers upward and blessings downward. They can appear to humans, though rarely, offering guidance or warning. They are intermediaries that make the divine tangible, comprehensible, present in daily life. Yet they are also more than mere servants. The Kitsune in service to Inari possess their own agency, their own wisdom, their own power. They choose to serve the deity, and this choice makes their service meaningful. They can make judgments about who deserves blessings and who requires correction. In some stories, it is the fox messenger rather than Inari who directly intervenes in human affairs, punishing the greedy or rewarding the kind. This creates an interesting dynamic where the line between Inari and the foxes becomes deliberately unclear. When someone prays at an Inari shrine, are they praying to the deity, or to the fox spirits, or to both at once? When a blessing or curse comes from that shrine, is it the work of Inari or the work of a fox acting on Inari's behalf, or on its own judgment? These questions are not meant to be answered definitively. The ambiguity is intentional, reflecting the complex, interconnected nature of the spiritual world. The association with Inari also expanded beyond agriculture over time. As Japanese society evolved, as money replaced rice as the primary measure of wealth during the Edo period, Inari's domain grew to encompass all forms of prosperity. Merchants prayed to Inari for successful business. Craftsmen sought blessings for their work. Swordsmiths in particular venerated Inari, praying for strength and perfection in their blades. This expansion meant that Inari shrines, and by extension fox spirits, became woven into every aspect of economic and social life. Today, you can still see this relationship in action. Modern corporations maintain small Inari shrines on their premises, seeking blessings for business success. When a new building is constructed, Shinto priests may perform Inari rituals to consecrate the ground and ensure prosperity. The fox messengers, once protectors of rice fields, now watch over stock exchanges and corporate headquarters, their ancient role adapting to contemporary contexts. The sacred foxes of Inari, the Zenko, represent the highest aspiration of the Kitsune. They are beings who have chosen to use their power in service of something greater than themselves, to act as bridges between heaven and earth, to bring blessings and prosperity to humanity. They embody the benevolent side of the fox spirit, the protector rather than the trickster, the wise counselor rather than the deceiver. Yet even these sacred foxes retain their essential fox nature. They are not angels or purely spiritual beings. They are still foxes, still connected to the wild, still possessing that quality of otherness that makes them fascinating and a little dangerous. A sacred fox messenger might help you, but it expects proper respect. It might bring you prosperity, but it will not tolerate insult or disrespect to Inari's shrines. The sacred fox is benevolent, but it is not tame. The Kitsune's reputation as one of the most powerful supernatural creatures in Japanese folklore rests on an array of magical abilities that make them formidable, unpredictable, and endlessly fascinating. Understanding these powers helps us grasp why folk spirits occupy such a prominent place in the Japanese imagination. The most famous and fundamental ability of the kitsune is shapeshifting. All foxes, once they reach the age of 50 or 100 years, depending on the tradition, gain the power to transform their appearance. Most commonly, they take human form, and when they do, they almost invariably choose to appear as beautiful women. These fox women are said to possess an otherworldly beauty, with features too perfect, skin too smooth, movements too graceful. To the untrained eye, they are simply stunning. To someone who knows the signs, there are always tells. Even in perfect human form, a kitsune may retain certain fox-like qualities. Their faces might be narrow with high cheekbones and pointed features. Their eyes might have an unusual shape or gleam with intelligence beyond normal human understanding. Their movements might be too fluid, too quick, with an animal grace. And most tellingly, they often struggle to completely hide their tail or tails. A glimpse of fur beneath a kimono, a shadow that shows more than one shadow should. These are the signs by which a clever person might identify a fox in disguise. But kitsune can transform into more than just beautiful women. They might appear as men, though this is less common in the stories. They might take the form of old women or priests. Some can transform into children or even appear as other people entirely, stealing someone's face and form. Advanced kitsune can become giants or monsters, taking on fearsome shapes to frighten or drive away enemies. And the most powerful can apparently become intangible, invisible, or transform into objects like lanterns or stones. The transformation ability is not mere illusion. When a kitsune becomes a human, it truly takes on human flesh for that time. It can be touched, it can eat and drink, it can feel pain and pleasure. Fox women who marry human men can bear children, though these children may inherit some aspect of their mother's supernatural nature. The transformation is real in every sense, yet it is also conditional, able to be broken by shock, by water revealing the true reflection, or by the presence of dogs that can see through any disguise. Water presents a particular problem for transforming kitsune. While a fox in human form might cast a human reflection in a mirror, water is said to always show the truth. Looking into a still pond or a basin of water will reveal the fox beneath the human disguise. This is why, in many stories, someone suspicious of a woman's true nature will contrive to make her look at her reflection in water. Dogs represent an even greater threat. For reasons embedded deep in folklore, dogs can always see through a kitsune's transformation. A dog will bark and growl at a fox in human form, recognizing the supernatural nature beneath the disguise. This is why fox women married to human men often live in fear of the family dog, knowing that the animal's reaction might expose them. In many tales, it is precisely this, a dog's aggressive reaction to a beloved wife or family member, that reveals a kitsune's true nature and forces them to flee. Beyond shape-shifting, kitsune possess the ability to create and manipulate illusions. These are not simple tricks of light or mind, but powerful magical constructs that can fool all the senses. A kitsune might create an entire mansion where only a shrine or a pile of rocks actually stands. It might make someone believe they are eating a sumptuous feast when they are actually consuming leaves or dung. It might make a person think they are walking a straight road when they are actually going in circles, lost in the wilderness. The sophistication of these illusions increases with the fox's age and power. A young kitsune with 1 or 2 tails might create simple tricks, making something appear to move when it is still, or creating phantom sounds. An ancient nine-tailed fox can construct illusions so complete and perfect that they become effectively real, creating entire false worlds that the victim cannot distinguish from reality. These illusions serve various purposes. Sometimes they are merely pranks, the fox amusing itself at human expense. Sometimes they are tests, the fox judging the character of the person caught in the illusion. Sometimes they are punishments, teaching lessons to the greedy, the cruel, or the disrespectful. And sometimes they are seductions, the fox creating scenarios to manipulate people for its own ends. One of the most visually striking abilities associated with Kitsune is Kitsunbi, fox fire. This manifests as mysterious floating flames, balls of light that appear in the darkness, dancing over fields or floating through forests. In Western folklore, these would be called will-o, the wisps or jack-o'-lanterns. In Japan, they are the fire of the fox. Kitsune can serve many purposes. Sometimes these fires mark the location of a kitsune wedding, glowing lanterns in a phantom procession. Sometimes they are used to lead travelers astray, luring them off safe paths and into danger. Sometimes they appear as warnings or omens, and sometimes they are simply manifestations of the fox's power, displays of supernatural energy given visible form. The nature of fox fire is ambiguous. Are they actual flames capable of burning? Are they cold fires providing light without heat? Are they illusions, or are they something else entirely? Perhaps spiritual energy made visible. The folklore does not provide clear answers, perhaps deliberately. What is clear is that seeing Kitsunebei is a sign that Kitsune are near, and whether that is fortunate or unfortunate depends on the circumstances. Many Kitsune, particularly powerful ones, are associated with a mysterious object called the Hoshi no Tama, which translates as star ball or wish, granting jewel. This appears in art and stories as a white or golden sphere, sometimes glowing, often depicted with flame, like patterns swirling around it. The fox may carry it in its mouth, clutch it under a paw, or keep it hidden. The Hoshi no Tama is described variously as the kitsune's soul, the source of its power, or a repository of its wisdom and magical energy. Some tales say that if a human can obtain a fox's Hoshi no Tama, they can compel the fox to serve them, as the fox will do anything to retrieve its precious ball. Other stories suggest that the ball contains the essence of the kitsune's being, and without it, the fox loses much of its power. The appearance of the Hoshi no Tama varies depending on the kitsune's power and nature. A young fox's star ball might be small and dim. An ancient nine-tailed fox's jewel might shine like a small sun, radiant with accumulated magical force. White foxes associated with Inari often have particularly luminous star balls, reflecting their celestial nature. Kitsune also possess abilities related to possession and mental influence. The phenomenon of Kitsunetsuki, which we will explore more deeply in the next section, involves a fox spirit taking control of a human's body and mind. But even without full possession, Kitsune can influence thoughts, plant suggestions, create confusion, or manipulate emotions. They might make someone suddenly feel overwhelming fear, or inappropriate desire, or inexplicable trust. These subtle influences can be as powerful as dramatic illusions, shaping behavior without the victim realizing they are being manipulated. Some kitsune demonstrate powers over specific elements or natural forces. Thunder kitsune can summon storms. River foxes can command water, creating floods or mists, or causing rivers to change their courses. Mountain foxes might cause landslides or create earthquakes. These elemental powers typically manifest in more powerful, older kitsune, particularly those with 5 or more tails. The ability to become invisible is mentioned in many tales, though whether this is true invisibility or simply an illusion making people unable to see them is unclear. Either way, Kitsune can move unseen when they choose, watching humans without being observed themselves, appearing suddenly as if from nowhere. Kitsune also possess enhanced physical abilities beyond those of normal animals or humans. They are incredibly fast, able to run with supernatural speed. They have exceptional hearing and can detect the slightest sounds from great distances. Their sense of smell is acute, allowing them to track people or detect lies through changes in body scent. In fox form, they are agile and graceful, capable of leaping to impossible heights or balancing on the thinnest branches. Some stories attribute prophetic abilities to Kitsune, particularly older ones. They might see the future in dreams or visions, or simply know things through their supernatural awareness. This prescience is never absolute, but it gives them a significant advantage in their dealings with humans, allowing them to be in the right place at the right time or to avoid dangers before they manifest. Perhaps one of the most significant abilities, though less flashy than shape-shifting or fire, is the Kitsune's power of seduction. This goes beyond mere physical attraction. A kitsune, particularly one in the form of a beautiful woman, can become the obsession of any person it targets. The victim becomes consumed with desire, unable to think of anything else, willing to abandon family, duty, and reason for the sake of the fox's attention. This power has destroyed countless men in folklore, draining them of vitality, wealth, and eventually life itself. The erosion of life force is related to this seductive power. In many tales, particularly those featuring no kitsune or malevolent foxes, the spirit slowly drains the essence or ki from its victim. A man who becomes intimate with a fox woman might find himself growing weak, losing weight, becoming listless and pale. His energy flows into the fox, sustaining and strengthening it while he wastes away. If the relationship continues too long, it will kill him, leaving behind a dried husk. Yet for all these formidable powers, kitsune have limitations and vulnerabilities. As mentioned, dogs can see through their disguises and will attack them, and foxes generally fear these animals. Water can reveal their true reflections. Certain sacred objects, particularly those associated with Buddhist temples or Shinto shrines, can ward off fox spirits or break their spells. Items made of iron are said to be anathema to many supernatural creatures in Japanese folklore, including some kitsune. A kitsune's powers are also tied to its tails. In some traditions, if its tails are cut off or damaged, it loses much of its ability. Similarly, if its hoshi no tama is taken from it, the fox becomes significantly weakened, and perhaps most significantly, a kitsune is bound by certain spiritual laws and rules. It cannot enter a properly warded sacred space without permission. It must fulfill bargains it makes, and there are exorcism rituals that can drive a fox spirit out of a possessed person or a place it has claimed. The powers of the kitsune reflect its nature as a liminal being, existing between categories. It can cross the boundary between animal and human through shape-shifting. It can blur the line between reality and illusion through its magical displays. It can move between the visible and invisible, between the physical and the spiritual. These abilities make the fox spirit a perfect embodiment of transformation, trickery, and the supernatural itself. Among all the phenomena associated with kitsune, few have had as significant an impact on Japanese culture and daily life as Kitsunetsuki, the possession of humans by fox spirits. For centuries, this belief shaped how people understood illness, particularly mental illness, and influence practices ranging from folk medicine to formal religious ritual. The word Kitsunetsuki literally means the state of being possessed by a fox. Unlike Western concepts of demonic possession, which generally frame the experience as wholly evil and destructive, Kitsunetsuki existed in a more ambiguous space. While possession was certainly unwelcome and often harmful, the fox spirit involved might have various motivations, and the possession might serve different purposes. A person possessed by a fox would exhibit distinctive symptoms. They might speak in voices not their own, sometimes claiming to be the fox directly and conversing with those around them. They might display knowledge they shouldn't possess, knowing secrets or speaking in languages they had never learned. Their personality might change dramatically, becoming wild, impulsive, or aggressive when they had previously been calm and reserved. Physical symptoms accompanied the mental changes. The possessed person might refuse to eat normal food, but crave a borage, the fried tofu associated with foxes. They might display unusual strength or agility. Their facial features might seem to shift, taking on fox-like qualities with narrowed eyes and sharpened features. They might emit animal sounds, barking or yipping like a fox. And in extreme cases, they might run on all fours or attempt to burrow into the ground. The onset of possession could be sudden or gradual. In some cases, a person might be possessed after a direct encounter with a fox, or after offending a fox spirit, perhaps by harming a fox or its den, or by disrespecting an Inari shrine. In other cases, the possession seemed to come from nowhere, striking without warning or obvious cause. Women were considered particularly susceptible to Kitsunetsuki, especially young women. This gendered aspect of the belief reflected broader social attitudes, but it also connected to the idea that foxes often took female form and might more easily connect to female victims. However, men could certainly be possessed as well, and many recorded cases involve male victims. Certain families were considered especially prone to fox possession. These were called Kitsune, moch fox, owning families. The belief held that some families had entered into compacts with fox spirits, deliberately keeping them as familiars or servants. These foxes would protect the family and bring them prosperity, but they might also be used to curse enemies or could occasionally turn on family members themselves. Being identified as a Kitsune mochi family brought severe social stigma. Other families would refuse to allow marriages with members of such families, fearing that the fox attachment would transfer to their own bloodline. In some regions, entire families were ostracized, unable to participate fully in community life. This discrimination sometimes lasted for generations, long after any actual evidence of fox possession had occurred. The reasons a fox might possess someone varied widely in the folklore. Sometimes it was pure malevolence, a wicked fox tormenting a human for its own amusement. Sometimes it was revenge, the fox punishing someone who had wronged it or killed a member of its family. Sometimes it was hunger or need, the fox feeding on the victim's life energy to sustain itself. And sometimes the motivation was unclear, the fox's purposes mysterious and unknowable. Some cases of possession were interpreted more sympathetically. A fox might possess someone to deliver a message or warning. It might take temporary control to save the person from danger, using its supernatural senses to guide them away from threat. Or in rare cases, a fox might possess someone it cared for, a descendant of a fox-human union, offering protection or guidance in moments of crisis. The treatment of Kitsunetsuki involved various methods depending on the severity and the resources available. In mild cases, the family might try home remedies first. They might offer fried tofu to appease the fox and ask it politely to leave. They might pray at an Inari shrine, asking the sacred foxes to intervene. They might use certain herbs or create charms meant to ward off fox spirits. If these simple measures failed, more formal intervention became necessary. Buddhist priests or Shinto priests might be called in to perform exorcism rituals. The Buddhist approach often involved chanting sutras, particular religious texts believed to have power over supernatural beings. The Heart Sutra was frequently used, its phrases cutting through illusion and revealing truth. The priest might also employ sacred implements, bells, staffs, or purified water to drive out the fox. Shinto exorcisms might involve purification rituals using salt, sake, and specific prayers to cleanse the possessed person and compel the fox to depart. At Inari shrines, special rites could be performed, calling on the sacred fox messengers to control their wild cousins and remove the possessing spirit. Some exorcism methods were more aggressive. The possessed person might be subjected to painful or frightening treatments intended to make their body an unpleasant place for the fox to remain. They might be exposed to smoke, given bitter medicines, or subjected to loud noises. These methods reflected a less compassionate understanding of possession as something to be driven out by force. In the most severe cases, specialists were consulted. Certain priests or yamabushi, mountain ascetics with shamanic abilities, had particular expertise in dealing with fox possession. These individuals had trained in the spiritual arts and knew secret techniques for compelling supernatural beings. They might engage in dramatic confrontations with the possessing fox, speaking directly to it, threatening it, or even physically striking the possessed person to drive the spirit out. Some accounts describe the fox being forced to reveal itself during exorcism, speaking through the possessed person's mouth to negotiate or plead. The fox might promise to leave if certain conditions were met, perhaps asking for offerings to be made at a particular shrine or for wrongs to be made right. These negotiations could become complex, with the exorcist and the fox bargaining over the terms of departure. When the possession finally broke, the departure was often dramatic. The possessed person might convulse violently, cry out, or fall unconscious. Witnesses sometimes reported seeing a shadow leaving the body, or smelling a fox-like scent, or hearing an animal cry. When the person woke, they typically had little or no memory of what had occurred during the possession, as if they had been sleeping or absent from their own body. Recovery after possession varied. Some people returned to normal quickly, with no lasting effects. Others remained weakened for a time, needing rest and care to recover their strength, and some carried psychological scars, living in fear that the fox might return or that they might be possessed again. From a modern perspective, we can understand Kitsunetsuki as a cultural interpretation of various medical and psychological conditions. Symptoms attributed to fox possession might have been manifestations of epilepsy, with its seizures and altered consciousness. They might have been dissociative disorders, where the person's sense of self fractures and alternate personalities emerge. They might have been psychotic episodes, with hallucinations and delusions. They might have been hysteria or conversion disorders, where psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms. The gendered nature of Kitsunetsuki, with women being seen as particularly susceptible, likely reflected the limited avenues available for women to express distress or rebellion in traditional Japanese society. A woman possessed by a fox could speak boldly, behave wildly, and make demands that would normally be completely unacceptable. The possession provided a framework within which certain behaviors became tolerable because they were attributed not to the woman herself, but to the supernatural being controlling her. The social ostracism of Kitsune mochi families can be understood as a form of scapegoating, a way for communities to explain misfortune or illness by attributing it to certain families' dealings with dangerous supernatural forces. This provided a sense of control and understanding, even if the actual explanation was fear and prejudice. Yet simply dismissing Kitsunetsuki as misunderstood illness or superstition misses something important about how it functioned culturally. The belief in fox possession provided a framework for understanding and treating mental and physical ailments. It offered explanations for inexplicable behavior. It created roles for religious specialists and gave them tools, however symbolic, for helping people in distress. And it reinforced cultural values and social norms, teaching lessons about the dangers of offending the spiritual world and the importance of maintaining proper relationships with the supernatural. Even today, while belief in literal fox possession has largely faded, the concept of Kitsunetsuki remains part of Japanese cultural consciousness. It appears in literature, manga, anime, and film. It influences how stories about mental illness and psychological distress are told. And it serves as a reminder of a time when the supernatural was not separated from daily life, but was woven intimately into how people understood themselves and their world. The phenomenon of Kitsunetsuki reveals the darker side of the Kitsune mythos, the potential for fox spirits to cause harm, to invade the self, to strip away agency and identity. But even in these frightening stories, the fox is not simply a monster. It has motivations, even if humans cannot always understand them. It can be reasoned with, appeased, or driven away, and the experience of possession, however terrifying, is survivable. The person possessed can be rescued, restored, brought back from the fox's control. Of all the kitsune in Japanese folklore, none is more famous, more powerful, or more feared than Tamamo-no-Mae, the nine-tailed fox whose legend spans centuries and continents. Her story is one of beauty and destruction, of supernatural power and human ambition, of a creature so dangerous that it threatened empires. The tale of Tamamo-no-Mae is actually part of a much larger narrative, one that stretches across Asia and through thousands of years of history. According to the legend, the fox spirit that would become Tamamo-no-Mae first appeared in ancient China during the Shang dynasty, around 3,000 years ago. In China, she was known as Daji, and she became the favorite concubine of King Zhou, the last ruler of the Shang dynasty. Daji was renowned for her incomparable beauty, grace, and sensuality. The king became utterly obsessed with her, abandoning his duties and the welfare of his kingdom to spend his time in her company. But Daji was not merely a seductive woman. She was cruel beyond measure, delighting in torture and suffering. She convinced the king to implement horrific punishments for those who displeased her. Servants were subjected to terrible tortures for minor offenses. Officials who spoke against her were executed in brutal fashions. She reportedly created a punishment called the bronze pillar, where victims were tied to a bronze pole suspended over a pit of burning coals, slowly roasting them alive while she watched and laughed. Under Daji's influence, King Zhou neglected his kingdom completely. The economy collapsed, rebellions erupted, and eventually the Zhou people rose up and overthrew the Shang dynasty entirely. When the capital fell, Daji was captured and condemned to death. But at the moment of her execution, when the sword fell, her true form was revealed. She transformed into a 1,000-year-old nine-tailed fox, ancient and terrible. Before she could be destroyed, she fled, vanishing into the chaos of war. The fox spirit surfaced again centuries later, this time in India. She took the name Lady K and became a consort to the Prince of Magadha. Once again, her beauty was legendary, her influence over the prince total. And once again, she brought destruction. The prince neglected his duties. The kingdom fell into disorder, and eventually the truth was discovered. Lady K was revealed as a fox spirit and driven out, fleeing across the sea. Finally, the fox arrived in Japan around the year 1130. By this time, she had accumulated tremendous power and experience. She had destroyed dynasties, manipulated emperors, and honed her abilities over more than 2,000 years. She had 9 tails, the mark of ultimate fox power. And she was far from finished with her campaign of ruin. The fox spirit arrived at the Japanese imperial court during the reign of Emperor Toba. She appeared one day near the palace, discovered by courtiers in the form of a young woman of astonishing beauty. She was approximately 18 years old in appearance, with flawless skin, lustrous black hair, and eyes that seemed to hold depths of wisdom. She claimed to be an orphan of noble birth, educated and refined. She called herself Tamamo-no-Mae, the name by which she would be remembered forever. Tamamo-no-Mae's knowledge and accomplishments were extraordinary. She could recite any poem from memory. She knew all the classics of Chinese and Japanese literature. She could discuss Buddhist philosophy and Confucian principles with equal facility. She played every musical instrument masterfully. Her manners were perfect, her conversation brilliant. She seemed to embody every ideal of courtly refinement. Emperor Toba's court was captivated. The emperor himself became particularly enamored with this remarkable woman. He appointed her as a lady in waiting, keeping her close at hand. He sought her counsel on matters of state. He held special poetry gatherings and cultural events just to showcase her talents. Tamamo-no-Mae became the jewel of the imperial court, admired by all. But then Emperor Toba fell ill. His sickness came on suddenly, without apparent cause. He grew weak, lost his appetite, and suffered from fever and delirium. The court physicians were baffled. None of their treatments had any effect. The emperor continued to deteriorate, coming closer to death with each passing day. In desperation, the court turned to Abe no Yasuchika, a renowned onmyoji or yin-yang master. These practitioners of onmai, a system of divination and magic drawing from Taoist and Buddhist teachings, were the spiritual advisors and magical specialists of the imperial court. Yasuchika performed divinations to determine the cause of the emperor's illness. His findings were shocking. The emperor's illness was supernatural in nature, caused by a malevolent spirit residing within the palace itself. Further divination pinpointed the source, Tamamo-no-Mae. The beautiful, accomplished lady in waiting was not human at all, but a powerful Waikai, a supernatural creature that was slowly draining the emperor's life force. When confronted with this accusation, Tamamo-no-Mae initially maintained her human disguise, denying everything. But Yasuchika was not fooled. He performed rituals and incantations, breaking through her illusions. At last, unable to sustain her human form, Tamamo-no-Mae revealed her true nature. She transformed into a massive 9-tailed fox, golden white in color, radiating supernatural power. The fox fled the capital, disappearing into the wilderness. Emperor Toba began to recover almost immediately, as if a curse had been lifted. But the threat was far from over. A 9-tailed fox of such age and power could not be allowed to roam free. It would bring destruction wherever it went, potentially raising armies of yokai or returning to wreak vengeance on the imperial family. Emperor Toba, now recovered, ordered the most skilled warriors in the land to hunt down and destroy Tamamo-no-Mae. In the year 1141, two renowned warriors, Miura Nosuke Yoshiaki and Kazusa Nosuke Hiritsune, led a great expedition of samurai and hunters into the Nasu region, northeast of the capital, where the fox was believed to have taken refuge. The hunt was long and difficult. The fox used all its powers to evade capture. It created illusions, leading the hunters in circles. It transformed into different shapes to confuse them. It summoned magical fire to drive them back. The warriors chased the fox across mountains and through forests, always just behind, never quite catching it. Finally, the hunters cornered Tamamo-no-Mae in an open plain in Nasu. The nine-tailed fox, knowing it could not escape, prepared to fight. The battle was fierce. The fox's power was immense, its attacks devastating. Several warriors fell before its magic and fangs. But the hunters were determined and skilled, and there were many of them against the single fox. Yoshiaki drew his bow and took careful aim. He whispered a prayer to the gods, asking for their aid in destroying this ancient evil. His arrow flew true, piercing the fox's body. Hiritsune followed immediately with his own shot, then another. The fox shrieked, a sound that shook the earth and sky. It tried to transform to flee, but the sacred arrows had done their work. It fell, its body convulsing. The warriors approached cautiously, weapons ready. But the fox did not rise again. The nine-tailed demon that had brought down dynasties, that had lived for over 2,000 years, that had manipulated emperors and devastated kingdoms, was finally dead. Yet death was not quite the end for Tamamo-no-Mae. The tale continues with what happened to the fox's body and spirit after the hunt. According to legend, the corpse of the nine-tailed fox transformed into a massive stone, a boulder that began to emit poisonous gases. Any creature that came near the stone, whether bird, insect, or animal, would die instantly. The grass around it withered. The air itself became toxic. This boulder became known as the Seki, the killing stone. It sat in the Nasu region for centuries, a feared and avoided landmark. People believed the malevolent spirit of Tamamo-no-Mae was trapped within the stone, still radiating hatred and death even after her physical form had been destroyed. In the 14th century, approximately 200 years after the fox's death, a Buddhist priest named Genno traveled through the region. He was renowned for his spiritual power and compassion. When he learned of the killing stone and the suffering it caused, preventing people from using the land and threatening travelers, he determined to do something about it. Genno approached the stone and began to recite sutras, Buddhist scriptures that are believed to have power over evil and suffering. He prayed for the liberation of the spirit trapped within. For days, he sat before the killing stone, chanting and meditating, offering compassion to the vengeful fox spirit. Finally, his efforts bore fruit. The stone cracked open with a tremendous sound. From within emerged the spirit of Tamamo-no-Mae, no longer a terrifying nine-tailed fox, but a ghostly, mournful shape. The spirit acknowledged all the evil it had done, all the suffering it had caused across centuries and kingdoms. It expressed remorse and asked for forgiveness. Genno offered the spirit absolution and guidance toward enlightenment. He performed Buddhist rites to help the spirit let go of its hatred, its hunger for revenge, its attachment to the world of suffering. At last, the spirit of Tamamo-no-Mae was freed, ascending to the next world. Its long cycle of destruction finally ended. The Seki itself, split open by Genno's compassion, ceased to be deadly. 3 pieces of the stone were distributed to different temples across Japan, where they were enshrined and watched over. One piece went to the Katsuyama Shrine in the Nasu region, near where the original stone had stood. Another went to a temple in Kyoto. The third traveled to the west. These stones became objects of veneration rather than fear, reminders of how even the most terrible evil could be transformed through compassion and spiritual practice. In March 2022, the killing stone at Nasu split in half, the crack appearing naturally after centuries of weathering. News of this event made headlines not just in Japan, but around the world, as people joked nervously about the spirit of Tamamo-no-Mae being released once again, while officials and scholars explained the split as a natural geological occurrence. The timing and symbolism captured imaginations, showing how even in the 21st century, the legend of the nine-tailed fox retains its power. The story of Tamamo-no-Mae serves multiple functions in Japanese folklore. On one level, it is a cautionary tale about the dangers of beauty and seduction, warning that appearances can deceive, and that even the most refined and educated person might harbor dark intentions. The emperor's inability to see through Tamamo-no-Mae's disguise until it was almost too late reflects fears about discernment and judgment, particularly regarding beautiful women at court. On another level, it is a story about the persistence and danger of evil. The fact that the same fox spirit destroyed kingdoms in China, India, and Japan over 2,000 years demonstrates the idea that evil is not easily defeated, that it can persist across time and space, wearing different faces, but remaining fundamentally the same. The redemption of Tamamo-no-Mae's spirit through the intervention of the priest Geno adds another dimension. It suggests that even the most terrible evil is not beyond redemption, that compassion and spiritual practice can transform hatred into peace. This Buddhist perspective offers hope that all beings, no matter how far they have fallen, can eventually find enlightenment. Tamamo-no-Mae has become an icon, the archetypal evil kitsune against which all others are measured. She appears in countless adaptations, retellings, and modern interpretations. She is a character in video games, manga, anime, and novels. Sometimes she is portrayed as purely villainous, other times as more complex and sympathetic, a tragic figure driven by forces she could not control. Her legend ensures that when people think of nine-tailed foxes, they think first of destruction and danger. Yet even in her evil, Tamamo-no-Mae commands respect. She was brilliant, powerful, and ultimately memorable. Her story has been told for centuries and will likely be told for centuries more, a testament to the enduring fascination with the most terrible and magnificent of all kitsune. Not all kitsune stories end in destruction and death. Some of the most beloved and poignant tales in Japanese folklore involve the tender, tragic romances between fox spirits and human men. These stories of fox brides explore themes of love across impossible boundaries, of secrets that cannot be kept, of families torn apart by destiny. The most famous of these tales centers on Kitsunetsuki, a white fox whose love for a human man produced one of the most significant figures in Japanese history. This story takes place during the Heian period in the 10th century and involves the legendary Onmyoji, Abe no Seimei. Abe no Yoshihira was a nobleman and scholar who one day was traveling through the countryside when he encountered a white fox being chased by hunters. The fox was injured and desperate, running straight toward Yoshihira. Perhaps recognizing something in the man's face, some quality of kindness or compassion, the fox seemed to plead for help with its eyes. Yoshihira did not hesitate. He concealed the fox in his robes and misdirected the hunters, sending them off in the wrong direction. Once the danger had passed, he examined the fox's wounds and treated them as best he could before releasing it back into the forest. Some time later, Yoshihira was walking in Kyoto when a beautiful young woman approached him. She introduced herself as Kuzunoha and expressed her gratitude for a kindness he had done. Yoshihira was puzzled at first, unable to recall helping any woman of that name. But there was something about her, something familiar in her eyes, something otherworldly in her grace. They began meeting regularly. Kuzunoha was educated, graceful, and possessed of an unusual wisdom. Their friendship deepened into love, and eventually they married. Kuzunoha bore her husband a son, a boy they named Saimei. The family lived together happily for several years, and Kuzunoha proved to be a devoted wife and mother. But happiness built on a hidden truth can never last forever. One day, Saimei was playing in the garden while Kuzunoha was busy with household tasks. She was lost in thought, perhaps momentarily forgetting to maintain her human form. When Saimei looked up, he saw not his mother, but a white fox standing where she had been. The child cried out in surprise. Kuzunoha immediately realized what had happened. Her true nature had been revealed. According to the laws of the fox spirit world, once a kitsune's true form is seen by their family, they cannot remain with them. The spell is broken, the boundary crossed, and the fox must return to its own world. Heartbroken, Kuzunoha knew she could not stay. She went to her husband and explained everything, that she was the white fox he had saved years before, that she had fallen in love with him and taken human form to be with him, that their son Saimei carried her fox blood in his veins. She wept as she spoke, and Yoshihira wept with her, but both knew what must be done. Before leaving, Kuzunoha wrote a farewell poem on the shoji screen door, her words a mixture of love and sorrow. If you love me, come and visit me. Shinoda Forest in Izumi Province, where kudzu leaves whisper in the wind. The poem played on the similarity between Kuzunoha and kudzu leaf, forever linking her name to the natural world. Then, still weeping, she transformed fully into her fox form and disappeared into the forest, returning to Shinoda Shrine, where she had lived before taking human form. Young Saimei grew up knowing his mother was a kitsune, understanding that he carried fox blood and fox magic in his veins. This heritage gave him supernatural abilities, insights into the spirit world, and magical powers that humans normally could not possess. He became the greatest onmyoji in Japanese history, an advisor to emperors, a sorcerer of legendary skill, and a figure who would be remembered and revered for centuries. His mother Kuzunoha became the patron spirit of Shinoda Shrine in Osaka. Even today, the shrine honors her memory, and people pray there for blessings in love and family. The story of her sacrifice, giving up her own happiness so her son could have a normal life and fulfill his destiny, became a symbol of maternal love transcending even the boundary between species. The tale of Kuzunoha and Abe no Seimei has inspired countless artistic works. It appears in no plays, kabuki theater, bunraku, puppet dramas, novels, and modern manga and anime. The emotional core of the story, a mother forced to abandon her child despite her love, a family separated by forces beyond their control, resonates across centuries and cultures. But Kuzunoha's story is not unique. Japanese folklore contains many tales of fox brides, and they follow similar patterns. A man helps a fox either by saving it from hunters or showing it some other kindness. Later, a beautiful woman appears, and the man marries her without knowing her true nature. They have children and live happily together. Then something reveals the truth, and the fox wife must leave, often with great sorrow. Another famous example involves a farmer who married a woman of exceptional beauty and grace. They had several children and were happy together for many years. But the family dog always growled and barked at the wife, making her uncomfortable. One day, when she was startled by the dog's aggression, she momentarily lost control of her transformation and revealed her fox tail. The husband saw it, and she knew she had to leave. Like Kuzunoha, this fox wife did not want to abandon her family. She came back at night, secretly, to nurse her infant children and watch over them. She would appear at her husband's bedside in the darkness, hold him one more time, and vanish before dawn. This continued for some time, until eventually she could no longer cross the boundary between worlds, and her visits ceased entirely. These stories explore several profound themes. They speak to the idea that love can cross any boundary, even between the human and the supernatural. They show that relationships built on deception, even well-intentioned deception, ultimately cannot survive. They reflect on the nature of identity and truth, asking what happens when someone you love is not who you thought they were. The fox brides in these tales are almost always portrayed sympathetically. They are not villains or monsters. They fall genuinely in love. They are good wives and devoted mothers. Their deception comes not from malice, but from a desire to experience human life and human love. When their true nature is revealed, and they must leave, the tragedy lies not in any evil they have done, but in the simple impossibility of their situation. The children of these unions, like Abe no Seimei, often inherit supernatural abilities from their fox parent. They might have heightened senses, the ability to see spirits, or talent for magic and divination. Sometimes they are viewed with suspicion by others who know their heritage, but often they use their gifts to help people, serving as bridges between the human and spirit worlds. Some versions of these tales end with the possibility of reunion. In certain stories, the fox wife tells her husband that if he truly loves her, he should come to a specific place, usually a shrine or a sacred forest. There, on certain nights, he might see her again in fox form. They cannot live together as they once did, but they can meet occasionally, maintaining some connection across the divide. These meetings are bittersweet. The husband sees his wife as she truly is, no longer human, no longer able to speak with human words. She might approach him as a fox would, perhaps resting near him or allowing him to stroke her fur, but they both know they cannot return to what they had. The boundary has been crossed, and while love remains, the relationship has fundamentally changed. In some tales, the fox wife continues to protect her human family from afar. When danger threatens, she appears in dreams to warn them. When illness strikes, she sends magical remedies. When enemies plot against them, she uses her powers to thwart those plans. Her love continues even though she cannot be present, and her supernatural abilities become blessings that guard her descendants for generations. The archetype of the fox bride reflects deep cultural attitudes about marriage, family, and the tension between nature and civilization. In traditional Japanese society, marriages were often arranged, and wives came from other families, sometimes other regions. They were, in a sense, strangers who had to integrate into new households. The fox bride takes this idea to an extreme, the ultimate outsider who nevertheless tries to become the perfect wife and mother. These stories also reflect on the Buddhist concept of impermanence and attachment. The fox bride relationships cannot last because all things are temporary. All relationships eventually end. Clinging to them, despite their impermanence, causes suffering. The fox wives who accept this truth and leave when they must show a kind of wisdom, releasing their attachment even though their love remains. Yet there is also something subversive in these tales. The fox brides often prove to be better wives than many human women, more devoted, more skilled, more loving. When their true nature is revealed, the husbands do not typically reject them in horror. Often they wish they could stay, mourning the loss of the best relationship they had ever known. This challenges the assumption that the supernatural is necessarily inferior to the human, suggesting instead that spirit beings might embody human virtues even more perfectly than humans themselves. In modern retellings and adaptations, fox bride stories often explore themes of discrimination and prejudice. The fox represents anyone who is different, anyone who must hide their true nature to be accepted by society. The revelation of truth becomes a metaphor for coming out or revealing any aspect of identity that might lead to rejection. And the question becomes whether love can survive the revelation of truth, whether acceptance is possible across difference. These tales of fox brides, tender and melancholy, represent the gentler side of Kitsune folklore. They remind us that not all supernatural beings are enemies, that love can cross impossible boundaries, and that sometimes the most profound tragedy is not death or evil, but simply being unable to stay with the ones you love. Among the many phenomena associated with Kitsune, few are as charming and mysterious as the Kitsune no Yomeiri, the fox's wedding. This refers to a specific weather occurrence and the folklore surrounding it, a moment when the natural world seems to reveal something of the supernatural realm. In Japan, as in many cultures, there are times when it rains while the sun is still shining, creating that strange atmospheric condition where light and water exist simultaneously. In English, this is sometimes called a sun shower. But in Japan, this phenomenon has long been associated with fox spirits and their weddings. When it rains while the sun shines, people would say that Kitsune no Yomeiri is happening. Somewhere in the supernatural world, fox spirits are holding a wedding ceremony. This belief was widespread, known throughout Japan, though the specific details and interpretations varied by region. The connection between sun showers and fox weddings may have several origins. One explanation relates to the trickster nature of foxes. Rain during sunshine is contradictory weather, defying normal expectations just as fox spirits defy normal categories. It is weather that doesn't make sense, weather that seems magical or supernatural, and therefore it is attributed to fox magic. Another explanation connects to the idea of foxes as beings of transition and liminality. A sun shower exists between states, neither fully sunny nor fully rainy, neither bright day nor storm. This in-between state mirrors the fox's nature as a creature between animal and human, between earthly and divine, between trickster and protector. In some regions, the belief went beyond mere attribution. People claim to have seen Kitsune no Yomeiri processions during sun showers. These would appear as lines of glowing lights, moving across distant hillsides or through forests, sometimes accompanied by the sound of music and celebration too faint to quite make out. The lights were Kitsune bee, fox fire, forming a wedding procession. At the head would be lights representing the attendants and family members. In the center, brighter lights would mark the bride and groom. Behind them, more lights for guests and well-wishers. The entire procession would move in a stately fashion, as if following a ceremonial path, glowing eerily in the strange light of the sun shower. Those who claimed to have witnessed such processions said they appeared suddenly, often at twilight or in the early morning mist, when the boundary between worlds was thinnest. The lights would emerge from one part of the forest or mountain and travel to another, perhaps moving toward a shrine or sacred place. They would glow with colors ranging from blue to white to golden, sometimes flickering like flame, sometimes steady like lanterns. Witnesses were usually farmers or travelers, people who happened to be in the right place at the right time. And they were almost always alone. Kitsune weddings were not meant for human eyes, and seeing one was considered either very fortunate or potentially dangerous, depending on the circumstances and the person's relationship with fox spirits. The smart thing to do upon encountering a fox wedding procession was to show respect. You should stop, bow toward the lights, and offer a quiet prayer or word of congratulation. You might leave a small offering if you had food or drink with you. What you should never do is interfere, try to follow the procession, or attempt to see more clearly. That would be disrespectful and potentially invite the fox's displeasure. In some stories, people who showed proper respect to a fox wedding received blessings in return. They might find unexpected good fortune. Their crops might flourish that year, or they might be protected from some danger they didn't even know was coming. The grateful fox spirits would remember the courtesy shown to them and return the favor. Conversely, those who were disrespectful or tried to spy on the fox wedding might be cursed or tricked. They might find themselves lost even on familiar paths. They might experience a run of bad luck. In extreme cases, they might be possessed or even driven mad by the offended foxes. The details of what a fox wedding actually involved were the subject of much speculation. Based on the limited glimpses people claimed to have had, the ceremonies apparently followed traditional Japanese wedding customs, but with supernatural embellishments. There would be a procession from the bride's home to the groom's, accompanied by music and lights. The bride would wear elaborate robes, perhaps made of moonlight or woven from mist. The groom would be dressed in formal attire befitting a spirit of his station. The wedding party would include family members and friends. Other fox spirits gathered to celebrate the union. There might be sacred fox messengers from Inari shrines, lending divine blessing to the ceremony. The procession would move to the rhythm of drumming that existed just on the edge of hearing, too faint for human ears to fully perceive. Some tales claimed that the wedding ceremony itself took place in supernatural spaces hidden from human view, sacred clearings in forests that existed half in this world and half in another, or shrine grounds that appeared only at certain times. The ceremonies would involve rituals honoring the kami, exchanges of sake cups, and binding oaths that linked two fox families together. In certain regions, actual wedding rituals incorporated references to fox weddings. When human weddings were held during sun showers, people would say the couple was receiving the blessing of the fox spirits. It was considered particularly auspicious, suggesting that the marriage would be blessed with fertility, prosperity, and lasting love. Some communities developed their own variations on the fox wedding belief. In some areas, the phenomenon was associated not just with sun showers, but with any unusual weather conditions, strange fogs, unexpected rainbows, or eerie light effects at dawn or dusk. The idea was that whenever weather behaved in uncanny ways, the spirit world was manifesting and fox weddings might be occurring. In modern times, several Japanese communities have created festivals based on the Kitsune no Yomeiri tradition. These festivals feature people dressed as foxes in wedding processions, with participants wearing kitsune masks and traditional wedding attire. Lanterns and lights decorate the streets, recreating the ghostly fox fire processions of legend. One of the most famous is held in Shuano, a small town in Shimane Prefecture. Every year, participants dress in white kimono with fox masks and process through the historic streets carrying lanterns. The event draws visitors from across Japan and internationally, people coming to witness this playful recreation of ancient folklore. These modern festivals serve multiple purposes. They preserve and celebrate traditional folklore, keeping stories alive that might otherwise be forgotten. They bring communities together in shared celebration. They attract tourism and economic activity. And they create moments where people can step partially into the world of legend, embodying supernatural creatures and participating in mythical ceremonies. The Kitsune no Yomeiri tradition also appears frequently in Japanese popular culture. It shows up in manga and anime, where characters might witness or even participate in fox weddings. It appears in video games, where fox wedding scenes create moments of wonder and beauty. It influences modern music, art, and literature, providing a rich source of imagery and symbolism. The enduring appeal of the fox wedding lies in its essential gentleness and romance. Unlike the terrifying legends of possession or the destructive power of nine-tailed foxes, the wedding procession is something beautiful, mysterious, and essentially benign. It speaks to the idea that the spirit world has its own joys and celebrations, that supernatural beings experience love and family just as humans do. It also reinforces the sense that the supernatural world exists alongside ours, normally invisible but occasionally glimpsing through. The sun shower becomes a crack in the veil, a moment when the boundaries thin enough that we might catch sight of something wonderful, if we are attentive and respectful. For those who believe, even in the 21st century, a sun shower is still a magical moment, when rain falls while the sun shines. Somewhere fox spirits are celebrating, joining together in bonds of love and family, honoring traditions as ancient as the forests themselves. And for just that moment, the world becomes a little more wondrous, a little more mysterious, a little more alive with possibility. The Kitsune is not merely a creature of ancient legends and religious shrines. It has permeated Japanese culture so thoroughly that it appears in the most mundane aspects of daily life, from food to language to popular entertainment. Understanding this cultural integration reveals how deeply the fox spirit is woven into Japanese identity. Perhaps the most accessible entry point into Kitsune culture is through food. As mentioned earlier, aborage, fried tofu, is strongly associated with foxes, believed to be a favorite food of these spirits. This simple ingredient has spawned several dishes that carry the Kitsune name. Kitsune udon is one of Japan's most popular noodle dishes. It consists of thick wheat noodles served in a hot broth, topped with slices of sweetened aborage. The dish is simple but deeply satisfying, comfort food found at every udon restaurant and made in home kitchens across the country. When you order Kitsune udon, you are ordering fox noodles, named for the tofu topping that foxes supposedly love. Similarly, Kitsune soba uses the same concept, but with buckwheat noodles instead of wheat noodles. The presence of the sweet fried tofu transforms an ordinary noodle soup into something with a connection to folklore, a mundane meal that carries echoes of ancient stories. Inari, sushi takes the Kitsune connection even further. This form of sushi consists of rice seasoned with vinegar, wrapped or stuffed into a pocket of aborage. The tofu pocket is simmered in a sweet sauce until it becomes tender and flavorful. Sometimes the packages are shaped with pointed ends, said to resemble fox ears. Inari, sushi is named directly for the deity Inari, whose fox messengers love fried tofu. These dishes represent more than just food. They are edible expressions of folklore, everyday items that carry the memory of supernatural beings. Every time someone eats kitsune udon or Inari sushi, they participate in a tradition that stretches back centuries, even if they don't consciously think about the mythological connections. The Japanese language itself is rich with expressions and idioms derived from kitsune folklore. To say someone has been tricked by a fox, Kitsunetsuki, means they were deceived or fooled by someone clever. Fox eyes. Kitsunemi describes narrow, cunning eyes. Fox face. Kitsunegao refers to someone with pointed, narrow features. These linguistic traces reveal how the fox's reputation as a trickster has become shorthand for cleverness and deception. When someone is outsmarted by a particularly cunning plan, the fox metaphor naturally comes to mind. The expressions are so common that even people with little knowledge of the actual folklore use them regularly. In the realm of traditional performing arts, kitsune plays a significant role. Na theater, the classical masked drama form that developed in the 14th century, includes several plays featuring fox spirits. One of the most famous is Kokaji, where a fox takes the form of a missing boy to help a swordsmith forge a sacred blade. Another is Seishoseki, based on the Legend of Tamamo-no-Mae and her transformation into the Killing Stone. Kabuki theater, with its more dramatic and populist approach, also features kitsune prominently. Plays like Yoshitsune and the Thousand Cherry Trees include extended scenes with fox characters, allowing actors to showcase their skills in portraying supernatural beings. The kumadori makeup used in kabuki often includes red and white patterns for fox characters, making their supernatural nature immediately visible to the audience. In bunraku puppet theater, fox characters present special challenges and opportunities. Puppeteers must convey both human and fox characteristics through the wooden puppets, showing the moment of transformation between forms. The best puppeteers can make the audience forget they are watching manipulated wood and see instead a living fox spirit. Japanese visual arts have depicted kitsune for centuries. Ukiyo-e woodblock prints from the Edo period frequently show fox women, often at the moment of transformation, with one foot still fox, like while the rest appears human. Artists like Utagawa Kuniyoshi and Tsukioka Yoshitoshi created memorable images of kitsune that continue to influence how these beings are visualized today. In these prints, foxes often appear with certain iconographic elements that identify them, the tails, of course, but also the hoshi no tama or star ball, flames or foxfire surrounding them, and specific costumes and settings that place them in familiar stories. The visual language developed in these traditional arts continues to inform modern depictions. Contemporary popular culture has embraced kitsune with enthusiasm. They appear as characters in anime and manga, sometimes as protagonists, sometimes as supporting characters. Series like Natsume's Book of Friends, Kama-sama Kiss, Jingitsune, and countless others feature kitsune as central elements of their stories. In video games, kitsune appear frequently. Games set in Japanese-inspired fantasy worlds often include fox spirits as characters, enemies, or allies. The Pokémon franchise includes multiple fox-inspired creatures, most notably Ninetales, which is explicitly based on the nine-tailed fox legend. League of Legends features Ari, a nine-tailed fox character derived from Korean Gumiho legends, which share common roots with Japanese kitsune. Modern literature continues to explore kitsune themes. Authors write novels where fox spirits interact with contemporary settings, bringing ancient powers into modern cities. These stories often use the kitsune as a lens to explore issues of identity, belonging, and the tension between tradition and modernity. The international fascination with kitsune has grown significantly in recent decades, as Japanese popular culture has spread globally through anime, manga, and video games. So too has interest in the folklore behind it. Kitsune have become recognizable symbols, even to people who know little else about Japanese mythology. This international spread has led to interesting adaptations and variations. Western artists and writers incorporate kitsune into their own works, sometimes staying true to the Japanese sources, sometimes blending the fox spirit tradition with elements from other cultures' folklore. The kitsune has become, in a sense, a global folkloric figure, no longer confined to its Japanese origins. The visual representation of kitsune has also evolved. Modern artists depict them in countless styles, from realistic to highly stylized, from traditional Japanese art styles to contemporary illustration and digital art. Cosplayers dress as kitsune characters, wearing fox ears and tails as costume elements. The aesthetic has become divorced from, but still connected to the original folklore. Tattoo art frequently features kitsune imagery. People around the world get tattoos of fox masks, nine-tailed foxes, or specific scenes from kitsune legends. These permanent marks on skin represent deep connections to the mythology, whether from cultural heritage, personal spiritual beliefs, or simple aesthetic appreciation. The symbolism of the kitsune in modern contexts has expanded beyond the original folklore. Fox imagery might represent cleverness, feminine power, transformation, nature, magic, or simply an appreciation for Japanese culture. The meanings people assign to kitsune vary widely, creating a rich tapestry of interpretation. In Japan itself, kitsune merchandise is ubiquitous. Gift shops at Inari shrines sell fox-themed items, keychains, plushies, ceramics, charms, statues, and more. The fox face, with its pointed snout and knowing eyes, appears on everything from towels to phone cases. The commercialization might seem to cheapen the mythology, but it also ensures that every generation encounters and engages with these ancient stories in some form. Educational materials for children often include kitsune stories, folktale collections, picture books, and school lessons introduce young Japanese children to fox spirits as part of their cultural heritage. These early encounters plant seeds that may grow into deeper interest later in life. Regional tourism also leverages kitsune associations. Areas with famous fox legends or Inari shrines promote themselves using fox imagery. Fushimi Inari in Kyoto, with its thousands of torii gates, has become one of the most photographed locations in Japan. Its fox statues and vermilion gates instantly recognizable worldwide. Some regions have even developed mascots based on local kitsune legends. These cute character versions of fox spirits promote local tourism, appear at festivals, and serve as symbols of regional identity. The transition from terrifying nine-tailed demon to adorable cartoon mascot demonstrates the flexibility and adaptability of folklore in modern contexts. In spiritual and religious practice, the connection between kitsune and Inari remains strong. Millions of people visit Inari shrines annually, praying for success in business, for good harvests, for fertility and family blessings. They leave offerings of sake and rice, sometimes fried tofu, and they pray before the fox guardian statues. For these worshippers, the kitsune is not merely folklore or entertainment, but a living spiritual reality, a connection to the divine that continues to function in their lives. Even people who do not consider themselves religious might maintain small Inari shrines in their homes or businesses, places where a tiny fox statue stands guard, where offerings are occasionally made, where prayers for prosperity are whispered. These practices blur the line between religion, tradition, and cultural habit, creating a space where the ancient and the modern coexist comfortably. The integration of Kitsune into daily life demonstrates how folklore serves not just as entertainment or historical curiosity, but as a living part of culture. The fox spirit moves from ancient myths into contemporary expressions, from religious practice into commercial products, from classical theater into digital games. At every level of Japanese culture, in countless small ways, the kitsune remains present, relevant, and powerful. As we near the end of our journey through the world of kitsune, it is worth reflecting on why these fox spirits have endured for so many centuries, why they continue to captivate imaginations, and what they reveal about the human experience. The kitsune endures, first and foremost, because it is complex. Unlike many folkloric creatures that can be easily categorized as good or evil, helper or monster, the fox spirit resists such simple classification. A kitsune might be benevolent or malevolent, protective or destructive, divine messenger or wild trickster. This ambiguity makes it endlessly interesting, capable of serving different narrative purposes and embodying different aspects of human experience. In the kitsune, we see reflected our own complexity. We are all capable of both kindness and cruelty, of both honesty and deception, of both building up and tearing down. We contain multitudes, and so does the fox spirit. This recognition of shared complexity creates identification and fascination. The theme of transformation lies at the heart of the kitsune's enduring appeal. The fox that becomes human, that crosses the boundary between animal and person, embodies one of humanity's oldest and most fundamental fascinations: the question of identity and the possibility of change. Who are we beneath the faces we show the world? Can we become something other than what we were born to be? What does it mean to wear a mask, and what happens when that mask slips? These questions remain as relevant today as they were 1,000 years ago. In an age of social media profiles and carefully curated public personas, the kitsune's shape-shifting takes on new resonance. We all transform ourselves to some degree, showing different faces in different contexts. The fox spirit, who must maintain a human form at all times or risk exposure, speaks to anyone who has ever felt they must hide their true self to be accepted. The love stories between foxes and humans explore the universal theme of love across difference, love that must overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. These tales ask whether love can bridge any divide, whether acceptance is possible when truth is revealed, whether sacrifice in the name of love is noble or tragic. These questions do not have easy answers, which is precisely why the stories remain compelling. The connection between kitsune and nature also contributes to their lasting relevance. As human societies have become increasingly urbanized and disconnected from the natural world, folklore about animal spirits serves as a reminder of our place within the larger ecosystem. The fox, living at the edges of human settlement, neither fully wild nor fully domesticated, represents the boundary between civilization and wilderness that we have always navigated and always will. In ecological terms, the real foxes that inspired the mythology continue to thrive in Japan. They have adapted to changing landscapes, living in forests and mountains, but also in urban parks and suburban neighborhoods. Their survival and adaptation mirror the way their mythological counterparts have survived and adapted through cultural changes. Both real and supernatural foxes prove resilient, clever, and capable of thriving in changing worlds. The Kitsune's association with rice cultivation and Inari worship connects it to the foundations of Japanese civilization itself. Rice is not merely food in Japanese culture. It is life, it is history, it is culture. The fox spirits that protect rice fields and serve the rice deity are therefore guardians of Japanese identity itself. As long as rice remains central to Japanese culture, the kitsune will remain relevant. The trickster aspect of kitsune folklore serves important psychological and social functions. Trickster figures in any culture provide outlets for expressing chaos, for questioning authority, for examining the rules that govern society. The fox that plays pranks on humans, that creates illusions and leads people astray, represents the unpredictability of life and the limits of human control. In a culture that often emphasizes order, hierarchy, and proper behavior, the kitsune offers a necessary counterbalance, a reminder that chaos exists and cannot be entirely eliminated. For artists and storytellers, the kitsune provides an incredibly rich subject. The visual possibilities alone are extraordinary. The moment of transformation, the fox fire dancing in darkness, the nine tails spreading like a fan, the star ball glowing in mysterious light, the beautiful woman with fox shadows behind her. These images have inspired artists for centuries and continue to do so. The narrative possibilities are equally rich. Kitsune can appear in any genre: horror stories, where they are terrifying monsters, tragic romances, where they are doomed lovers, comedies where they are clever tricksters, adventures where they are mysterious guides, philosophical tales where they are teachers of wisdom. This versatility ensures that every generation can find new ways to tell fox spirit stories that resonate with contemporary concerns while maintaining connections to traditional motifs. The kitsune also benefits from being part of a living religious tradition. While many folkloric creatures exist only in stories and entertainment, the fox spirits maintain a presence in actual spiritual practice through the Inari shrines. This gives them a concrete, physical presence in the landscape of Japan. You can visit a shrine, see the fox statues, make offerings, and participate in traditions that stretch back over a millennium. This tangible connection keeps the mythology alive in a way that purely literary traditions cannot match. The international spread of kitsune mythology in recent decades has also contributed to their continued relevance. As people around the world encounter these fox spirits through popular culture, they bring new perspectives and interpretations. The kitsune becomes a bridge for cultural understanding, a point of entry into Japanese culture and mythology for people who might otherwise have little exposure to it. This global engagement also means that the kitsune evolves, taking on new meanings and interpretations as it travels. While purists might worry about dilution or misunderstanding of traditional stories, this evolution is actually how folklore has always worked. Stories change as they spread, adapting to new contexts and audiences. The kitsune of international popular culture may differ from traditional Japanese depictions, but that doesn't invalidate either version. Both can coexist, each serving different purposes for different audiences. The lessons embedded in kitsune folklore remain valuable. The stories warn against being deceived by appearances, teach the importance of showing respect to nature and the spiritual realm, explore the consequences of actions and the persistence of karma across time, examine the nature of love and loyalty, and question what it means to be human versus animal, natural versus supernatural. These are not simple morality tales with obvious lessons. The best kitsune stories are ambiguous, open to interpretation, capable of yielding different insights, depending on the reader's perspective and life experience. This depth ensures that people can return to these tales throughout their lives and find new meanings each time. There is also something fundamentally appealing about the idea that the world contains more than what we can see, that magic might be real, that spirits might walk among us. In an age of scientific rationalism, where the supernatural is often dismissed as primitive superstition, folklore like that of the Kitsune preserves a sense of wonder and mystery. It suggests that reality might be more complex, more strange, more wondrous than the purely material explanation would have us believe. Whether one believes literally in fox spirits or regards them as purely symbolic, engaging with Kitsune folklore opens up imaginative space. It invites us to look at the world differently, to see the shadows at the edge of vision, to wonder about the beautiful stranger who seems just slightly too perfect, to feel the presence of something ancient and powerful in the wilderness beyond the city lights. The enduring mystery of the Kitsune is not a puzzle to be solved, but an invitation to wonder. Who are these beings really? What do they want? What truths about existence, about nature, about the human condition do they embody? The fact that these questions cannot be answered definitively is not a weakness but a strength. Mystery is what keeps us engaged, keeps us telling and retelling these stories, keeps us seeking understanding across the centuries. As we've journeyed together tonight through the complete story of the Kitsune, from its ancient origins to its modern manifestations, from its role as divine messenger to terrifying demon, from the tragic fox brides to the mysterious wedding processions, we've encountered a mythology that is rich, complex, and eternally fascinating. The Kitsune is more than a creature of legend. It is a mirror reflecting human nature, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of transformation and mystery, a guardian of tradition and a subject of endless reinvention. It is, in every sense, one of the great achievements of human imagination, a story that has survived for over 1,000 years and shows no sign of fading. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the realm of the Kitsune. We have walked paths worn smooth by countless tellings, encountered fox spirits in all their forms, from the benevolent messengers of Inari to the terrible Nine, tailed destroyer Tamamo-no-Mae. We have witnessed transformations, possessions, and weddings. We have mourned the fox brides, forced to leave their families, and marveled at the magical powers that make Kitsune among the most formidable beings in all of folklore. The fox spirits of Japan teach us that the world is not simple, that beings can embody contradictions, that love can cross any boundary, even if it cannot always survive there. That respect for the natural and spiritual worlds remains vital even in modern times. They remind us that transformation is always possible, that appearances can deceive, and that mystery itself has value. As you drift toward sleep tonight, perhaps you will dream of fox fire dancing in a distant forest, of a beautiful woman whose shadow shows too many tales, of a shrine guarded by ancient stone foxes whose eyes seem to follow your movement. Perhaps you will hear the distant music of a wedding procession moving through mist and rain while sunshine breaks through the clouds. The Kitsune waits at the threshold between worlds, between sleeping and waking, between human and animal, between earth and heaven. And in the space between, in that liminal place where anything might be possible, the fox spirit continues its eternal dance, clever and ancient, terrible and wonderful, forever just beyond our complete understanding. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the complete story of Kitsune. If you enjoyed this exploration of Japanese folklore, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Mystic Tales. Your support helps me continue creating these long-form, atmospheric journeys into mythology and legend. Until next time, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with wonder. Good night.